Alex Murdaugh was once known as a prominent yet personable attorney, someone who used his personality to get clients and win big cases in the low country of South Carolina. But now, he is known as something else, a killer who took a shotgun and blasted his son in the chest and head, ending his life, and then picking up an AR-style blackout rifle and hunting down his wife, killing her, leaving half his family dead on a rainy, dark June night. Alex was convicted by a jury and sentenced by the judge to a term that will prevent him from ever being a free man. But now, new shocking allegations against the clerk of the court that could get Alex Murdaugh a new trial. Allegations including tampering with jurors, influencing jurors, and getting jurors removed from the case in the middle of the trial. We are live from the Low Country with all the explosive allegations as Alex Murdaugh tries desperately to get a new trial.
I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight here on Closing Arguments. Big news breaking today. I don't know if you felt the earth move. Did you feel the earth move today? Well, the epicenter of that quake was the Low Country of South Carolina. Wow. Wow. Okay. Let's get into it. Let me start here, though. You know who I am. Vinny Politan, former prosecutor, been covering trials for years here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. So anytime defense attorneys make allegations, especially after a conviction, about things that happened, I take all of it with a huge, I mean huge, grain of salt. Okay? That's my perspective. You can have a different one if you want. This is just based upon my experience inside a courtroom, outside the biggest courthouses in the nation, covering trials and cases, okay? So when allegations are made about whatever, you know, some other guy did it, injustice here, grain of salt, always. I always use it because it is rare, and again, this is after a conviction, after a jury's heard all the evidence and a judge has made rulings, etc. It is rare that someone convicted of murder gets a new trial, either through an appeal or through a motion to the trial judge that, yeah, mistakes were made, new evidence was uncovered, etc., etc. When it does happen, it makes a huge headline, so you hear about it. But what you are hearing is the tip of the tip of the tip of the tip of the iceberg. The rest of those appeals and motions for new trials lose, overwhelmingly lose. And don't forget, if a criminal defendant does win a new trial, that's all they get is just another jury. It's pretty much the same evidence that'll be presented to just a different jury. So we all watched this trial of Alex Murdaugh. I mean, you saw it, I saw it. We saw and heard the evidence, which I believe was overwhelming. I can't believe when I say that. It's a controversial statement that there was overwhelming evidence in this case. I mean, he lied about where he was at the time of the murder, and he was at the scene of the murder at the time of the murder. So people that don't think that's overwhelming, that's fine. I happen to. Like, you were there at the time of the murder, but you tell everyone you're somewhere else. And then at the trial, they prove that you lied and you were actually there because there was a recording taking place that you didn't know about. To me, that's overwhelming. Not controversial. And I know some people will be like, oh, I can't believe he said that. That's fine. You're entitled to your opinion. I'm just telling you mine, based upon my perspective and my experience. Could be different than yours. Okay. Now the big but, right? You ready for the big but? The big but is rare, explosive allegations from Alex Murdaugh's defense team now about something that happened. And what I will say about it is that if these allegations that are being made by Alex Murdaugh's defense team are actually true, okay? Again, big if, grain of salt, all of that, running it through all of that. But if it's true, he's going to get a new trial and deserves a new trial, if it's true, because what we are talking about here. So let's get to it. Take a listen. This is Jim Griffin, Alex Murdaugh's defense attorney. He's there with Dick Harpootlian. They're speaking at a big press conference today. Take a listen.
What we had filed today, supported by sworn testimony of jurors, is that the clerk of court had improper private communications with the jurors, and the subject matter of those communications was the credibility of the defense that the Murdaugh legal defense team put up, and it was the believability of the defendant's own testimony. Now, there's been a lot of talked about whether Alex should have taken the stand. I can assure you, when we considered what factors and what we should and should not do and considered whether he should take the stand, we never considered the likelihood, as reported to us by the jurors, that the clerk of court would go in to the sanctity of the jury room before he testified and tell the jurors, don't be fooled by his testimony, watch out for his body language. And that is what the sworn testimony that we have filed in court today says. And if that is true, which we have every reason to believe that it is, and no reason to believe that it's not, there's no choice but the courts to grant a new trial.
And again, you know who I am. And you know I've got that big grain. But if that's true, that is a huge, huge problem. Nobody, doesn't matter who you are, nobody talks to the jurors. The jurors can't even talk to each other about the case before deliberations. Nobody else is supposed to talk to them about the case. And if it's the clerk of the court, again, this is an allegation. It's an allegation. They've got to prove it. But let's get some more. Joining me tonight, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson from the State House in Columbia, South Carolina, in the middle of all of this as the earth was shaking from the low country. Matt, great to see you tonight. It's a big wow. This is a wow one tonight because of the nature of these allegations. But what I heard from Jim Griffin is it's coming from jurors. Jurors are saying this, so the defense is speaking with the jurors. Do we know the circumstances, the how and why these jurors were speaking with the defense?
Well, you know what, Vinny? They say that they were unhappy with the way that things turned out, and after these particular jurors, at least 4 that are a part of these 65 pages that were filed over in the courthouse here behind me, the appellate court, they say that they learned a lot of impropriety and things that should not have happened. This all taking place today just feet away from the state capitol building here in South Carolina. A swarm of media, all recognizable because this was the same national and local media that covered the trial. Both Dick and Jim said that it was a homecoming of sorts, and they want these people and you at home to witness these jurors that they're talking to be interviewed in open court. But they also spoke about how we got here. Take a listen.
So immediately in the aftermath of the verdict, we had received information that we needed to look into what happened in the jury room. We started down that road and we met a zone of silence. No jurors would speak to us. And so we were, you know, what I like to call, we were given the Heisman, right? And then when the clerk of court wrote her book, published her book, that zone of silence collapsed. And jurors were upset about that, the ones we talked with, and they were more than willing to come forward and tell us the things that we had sort of heard through a whisper campaign. But, and so as a result of that, we were able to interview some jurors. Now, there's still a number of jurors who maintain that zone of silence, who have not talked to us. We did try to reach out to most all of them that we could get in touch with, but the information we got, I can tell you, was independent of each juror. The first juror we talked to, we got information about Ms. Hill saying, don't be fooled. And then the second juror, independent of the first juror, says the same thing, and the third juror, independent of the other 2, say the same thing.
All right, so we're talking about 4 jurors that they interviewed, sworn affidavits, and Vinny, they're saying no contradictions.
This is huge. All right, so who is Becky Hill?
Becky Hill, well, she is a lifelong resident of Colleton County, right there where this courthouse and this trial took place. She's an elected official. She was in charge of the jury of sorts, because making sure that they were there on time, making sure that they would get their meals when ordered. But she also wrote the book that we talked about, and it was called Behind the Doors of Justice. And again, you heard that jurors were not happy about that. And here's a little bit more about that part.
Jurors who obviously were not comfortable with how she handled matters were even less comfortable with her going on a book tour and making money off what she did. That's what was reported to us.
Well, she's trying to make a lot of money. That's the point. I mean, she's trying to make money off of it. She's selling the book. I mean, the question is, was it a successful scheme? I don't know. I mean, if you've read it, I'm not going to give a book review here, but I don't know that you'd buy the book. I mean, it's not well written. The story she tells is not accurate, in our opinion, at least the facts as we saw them.
Strong allegations, Vinny, and we asked media out front here. We said, did you speak with Becky Hill about these allegations? And they said that there was no point to. Of course, Court TV reached out to her, and she said it's simply untrue.
Okay, so how about the Attorney General reaction here? Any reaction from the prosecution side, and what's next?
There is reaction. It's a short statement, but it's a powerful one. Let's put it there up on your screen. This is from Attorney General Alan Wilson. We are currently reviewing the defense's latest motion and will respond through the legal process at the appropriate time. Because again, where this stands is it's going to be, of course, reviewed. It could take 10 days, maybe longer, to see if there's going to be a hearing in all of this, to see if jurors will be called and if there is an investigation. Really, you have the defense here saying that they don't want SLED anywhere near this investigation if it is reopened or opened in terms of juror misconduct. They want the FBI, Vinny.
Okay, finally, how about Alex Murdaugh himself? Any reaction from the double murderer?
Big reaction from Alex Murdaugh. But of course, he couldn't watch the news conference because he's in trouble. He's in a little bit of trouble, Vinny, with the allegations from the prison saying that he was misusing his iPad. So he can't use his iPad or his cell phone. But Jim Griffin did address the fact that he talked to him about these allegations, what they were going to say at this news conference. And this was his reaction.
Well, I can't talk about attorney-client privilege information. I can tell you that when I shared with him the affidavits, he's a lawyer, he was astonished, he was shaking, he was in disbelief, and he thanked Mr. Harpootlian, Mr. Barber, and myself for spending our weekends on dirt roads in Colleton County.
They also went on to say he was an attorney himself. He understood the magnitude of all of this. And again, you heard right there, he was literally shaking. And he maintains his innocence, by the way, too.
All right, Matt Johnson, live in the Low Country tonight. Matt, we appreciate it. Thanks so much. Great reporting. All right, folks. Let's begin here. Let's walk through all of this. Let's walk through what happened here, what the allegations are from the defense. I want it to be crystal clear to everyone watching right now. So I'm going to walk you through it. The first issue really involves an alleged Facebook post by one of the jurors. Take a look. Ms. Hill, again, this is Becky Hill, the clerk of court, according to the defense, invented a story about a Facebook post to remove a juror she believed might not vote guilty. Ms. Hill told Judge Newman about a Facebook posting she purportedly saw while perusing a Facebook group page called Walterboro Word of Mouth. Walterboro, South Carolina is where this all took place, the trial. The post, purportedly by juror number 785's ex-husband, Tim Stone, okay, allegedly stated that his ex-wife was saying that she was on the jury and saying stuff about her verdict was going to be, okay? So there's allegedly this post by the ex-husband of one of the jurors. Now, according to Ms. Hill, a subordinate employee in the clerk's office, Lori Weiss, discovered that post was taken down and replaced with an apology post. So that post, that alleged post that got the juror removed, allegedly, is gone. Here's Dick Harpootlian at the press conference today talking about this.
Phil Barber and I and Howie Miller from my office went down and interviewed the ex-husband, and he allowed us to, I wouldn't know how to do it, but Phil did, to download his entire Facebook history. None of that is in there.
Okay, so the defense says they found an expert who went through the Facebook profile of juror 785's ex-husband and said he never made any of these posts. So, like, who made this post? So 785, though, was dismissed by the judge. You may recall this moment from the trial. Take a look.
We're going to replace you with one of the other jurors. Have you brought everything that you have outside of, you left some stuff in there? What do you have in there?
A dozen eggs.
Say it again?
A dozen eggs.
A dozen eggs?
Yeah, one of the other one of the other jurors brought in eggs for everybody from the farm. So
okay.
eggs in my purse and nut water.
All right, well, you're going to leave the eggs. You want to leave the eggs or take the eggs? You're going to take the eggs.
And that was, I remember that moment because I was down there when all that was happening. But that juror was dismissed. And again, the defense is saying the court clerk thought she might not vote guilty and made up this story about this post to get her kicked off. That's their allegation. Next allegation that's significant here, alleged private conversations with the foreperson by the court clerk. Take a listen. Here's the judge appointing, okay, here it is. Ms. Hill and the jury foreperson, juror 826, had private conversations on multiple occasions. Juror 826 was appointed by Judge Newman. Take a listen.
Members of the jury, I'm appointing juror number 826 to be the foreperson of the jury. The foreperson has the responsibility of serving as the spokesperson for the jury from this point forward. Will have the responsibility of presiding over the jury deliberations and will have the responsibility of completing the verdict form representing the unanimous verdict of the jury when we reach that point, and also sit in the first seat, which is the seat designated for the foreperson. Understand? All right. Very good.
So 826 becomes the new foreperson or the foreperson chosen by the judge. And this is one that, according to two jurors, sworn affidavits, had conversations with Becky Hill, the court clerk, during the course of the trial. I told you about juror 630. Here's juror 785, the one that gets kicked off, says, when we visited the Moselle crime scene, Ms. Hill and juror 826, the foreperson, walked off together, avoiding other jurors in order to have a private conversation. So two jurors swearing in affidavits that the court clerk had conversations with the foreperson. Finally, this is one thing that Jim Griffin was talking about here. The allegation that the court clerk is instructing the jury before Alex Murdaugh testifies to be skeptical, to not believe what he's testifying to. Take a look. Here's the affidavit of juror 630 again. Toward the end of the trial, Rebecca Hill told the jury not to be fooled by the evidence presented by Mr. Murdaugh's attorneys, which I understood to mean that Mr. Murdaugh would lie when he testified. She also instructed us to watch him closely immediately before he testified, including to look at his actions and look at his movements, which I understood to mean that he was guilty. That's juror 630. Now, the next thing I want to show you is from this book right here. This is the book written. You can see her name right here, Becky Hill. Court of the Clerk wrote a book. It's out. You can buy it. It's available on Amazon. Here's an excerpt from the book that is cited by the defense. She says, I accompanied 3 jurors from the trial to New York City. As I mentioned, Craig Melvin and Savannah Guthrie, Court TV alum, of the Today Show, interviewed the 3 jurors during a 7-minute high-energy segment. Once the taping of the Today Show concluded, we were whisked away from the 850-foot skyscraper building by a driver. NBC put us up in the hands of the fabulous Haley Barber, Dateline producer. Afterwards, the jurors told me they felt like they were heard and loved their 15 minutes of fame in the Big Apple. But again, this is an unusual situation. I've never seen where the court clerk is with the jurors for these interviews. Usually the jurors come, and maybe with family members, maybe they have a lawyer, but the clerk of the court. And again, they say a lot of the motivation for what Becky Hill did was to write this book and somehow profit from all this. Again, these are all allegations. All allegations. We're going to bring in our experts to go through these allegations, plus coming up next hour.
On the docket tonight in Fremont County, Idaho, doomsday cult killer Lori Vallow Daybell getting ready for her appeal, this time with the help of the public defenders. Is there any reason she should get a second chance?
I am Jamie Long.
Yeah, and guess what? They know. They know exactly what happened. And they love me, and we're still together forever. They love me, and they are fine, and they do know the truth, and I know the truth. And we're the only people that do.
These are the cases that captivated the world,
Couldn't keep my life straight.
that demanded our attention,
They were killed by their own children.
that challenged the legal system and ourselves.
How in the world can a mother wait 30 days before reporting her child missing?
These are the trials that became legendary. And now you can relive them all in one place. Court TV Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
Ms. Hill told the court that there was a Facebook post by this juror's ex-husband. The ex-husband has filed an affidavit saying, I've never posted a Facebook post. Ms. Hill in her office says he must have deleted it. We can't find it. But they produced a Facebook post from someone with the same name apologizing for an earlier Facebook post and that Satan made him do it and et cetera, et cetera. And Ms. Hill related that as being this juror's ex-husband. Ms. Hill had this juror's ex-husband's photograph. You can match them up. They don't match. And what we do know, and we laid it out in detail in our brief, is that the apology Facebook post was posted, I think, on February 16th and said we had deleted it the day before, February 15th. Ms. Hill is telling Judge Newman on February 23rd that I just saw this Facebook post. Impossible.
All right, juror 785 gets booted. There's all this drama surrounding this Facebook post. Here's something else from her affidavit, from juror 785's affidavit. March 2nd, 2023, on the day of the verdict, I received a call from my ex-husband. I did not answer. This call upset me greatly, and I asked to speak to the clerk of the court. I told her I was scared. She said that the Murdaughs probably got to him. Ms. Hill then again asked me questions about my opinion regarding Mr. Murdaugh's guilt. I still had questions. I then went into the jury room. Approximately 10 minutes later, I was excused from the jury. Here's Judge Newman that day.
As you know, we've had some discussions with you over the past couple of days concerning indications of conversations with a few folks not on the jury concerning the case and expressing some opinion about the case. I have reviewed everything, including statements given by individuals and recorded interviews, and concluded that despite my order to not discuss the case with anyone, that intentionally or unintentionally you've had some discussions with some folks not on the jury, and which is going to require me to remove you from the jury. I have not spoken with her today, but no, this is not related to, I know we also had some conversation was brought up concerning your ex-husband, but that's not a part of this consideration at all. This is totally independent of any other conversation that he might have had concerning you. That's not part of the order of the court.
All right, what's going on here? Let's take you down to the Low Country, bringing my guest in Port Royal, South Carolina. Criminal defense attorney Jared Newman is back with us in Columbia, South Carolina. Criminal defense attorney Lori Murray, check her out on TikTok. Also in Columbia, attorney Dane Phillips is back with us. And in Charleston, criminal defense attorney Christopher Adams, former president of the National Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers. Everybody knows a whole lot about everything. My head is exploding today with this. Lori Murray chomping at the bit, I can tell. What do you think? What do you think?
Well, Dick Harputlian would not give a book review of that book during the press conference. I gave a book review on that book, and it is junk. And that's the nicest word I can think of for it. It is self-aggrandizing. It's god-awful.
But is it a reason for him to get a new trial, Lori?
No, not that specifically alone, but everything else, absolutely it is.
Okay.
I mean, there was so much. There's so much here, Vinny. And I know that you want to see him go away. And I know that you think he's guilty. But
I know he's guilty. I saw the trial. I saw the trial. Dane, let me ask you, Dane. How do we need more than an affidavit? Do people have to come in and testify? Like, how do I know if this is true? Like I said at the top, no offense to anyone here, but anytime I see a defense lawyer after a conviction making a statement, I break out a big grain of salt, right? Because your job is what you need to do. But what are your thoughts tonight, Dane? How do we figure out if all these allegations are true?
Well, I've actually been involved in an after-discovered evidence case early on in my career, and that initial step with the Court of Appeals, because remember, his case is pending before the Court of Appeals. They're filing a motion to suspend the appeal, basically hold it on, basically put it on pause, and then ask to send it back to the circuit court, to Judge Newman, to have an evidentiary hearing to hear evidence. And so that initial threshold with these affidavits is enough. In our case, it was enough. That's what we had to do, was file affidavits.
So to get a new trial, what you're saying is we need to get a hearing in front, they need to get a hearing, not me. They need to get a hearing in front of Judge Newman, bring in these jurors, let them testify, let them be cross-examined, and maybe bring Becky Hill in?
Not maybe, 110%.
110%.
She absolutely, she's a critical witness to this hearing.
All right, Christopher Adams, El Presidente, what, have you ever seen anything like this?
Will it be Judge Newman?
What's that?
This is a bombshell, Vinny. This is a complete bombshell.
I'm doing it again. Sorry.
The allegations are tremendous. They're supported by affidavits, and Dane's making the point that the next step would be for the Court of Appeals to send the case back, and I believe they've given the Attorney General 10 days to respond with their position with the Court of Appeals. It likely will be sent back to the trial court for an evidentiary hearing. I think there will be a question about whether Judge Newman would hear this or whether he can't hear this because he was involved not in any inappropriate conversations,
but as a witness.
But he was involved in conversations with the Clerk of Court related to Facebook, so he would have information outside of the proper channels.
Wow.
Again, in no way suggesting he did anything wrong, but
right, but he's a witness.
Probably involved.
He's a witness.
In the judge coming to preside over the hearing.
Okay, Jared Newman, not related to Judge Newman. Let me ask you this. I'm going to put this on the screen. This affidavit of Juror 630. Toward the end of the trial, Rebecca Hill told the jury not to be fooled by the evidence presented by Mr. Murdaugh's attorneys, which I understood to mean that Mr. Murdaugh would lie when he testified. She also instructed us to watch him closely immediately before he testified, including to look at his actions, look at his movements, which I understood to mean that he was guilty. The clerk can't talk to the jurors about anything, right? Except like, what do you guys want for lunch?
That's correct. And most clerks looking through this, they'll tell them when breaks are, give them whatever information to make them comfortable. The thing that really bothered me about this, if this is true with Becky Hill, and I've known her a long time, she's Judge Buckner's court reporter. If it is true, if it proves things that are potentially criminal, jury tampering, obstruction of justice, if nothing else, we have a misdemeanor crime in South Carolina called misconduct in office.
Jared, you're saying this is not only a problem in terms of what happened to Alex Murdaugh, it's a potential problem for the clerk is breaking the criminal laws of South Carolina?
If I were the clerk, I'd lawyer up, number one, right now. Because what happens in something like this, this is what I believe, if this happened, if it's true, this is a structural defect. This is a due process structural defect. And I don't know, you could maybe go out on the line if it's found it is a structural defect by the government. Double jeopardy may apply, and this case may go away.
Wait, she's not a prosecutor. She's the clerk of the court. So the clerk of the court?
She's government. Government.
Wow. Lori Murray, do you agree? Well, you probably do, right?
Actually, I don't agree on this one. I don't think
so that's
it's
up for
jeopardy.
debate at least. That's up for debate at least. So let me ask you, Lori, let me ask you a question here, though. So these affidavits, right? I grew up, my father was a lawyer. I always heard this word affidavit. My father was always doing affidavits. What are the chances that any of these jurors who are on these affidavits would say something differently in the courtroom? And if they did, whose fault is? Like, the defense can't just file an affidavit that is not true, can they? Like, what happens if this is all a lie?
Well, this is a sworn statement. I mean, it's notarized, it's sworn. And remember that one of them is signed by his paralegal because that juror would not go on the record. So if they do get into court and they change their story, remember this, where you signed here, where you swore to tell the truth in this affidavit, and now you're changing your story. And, people do decide that they don't want to testify. People do decide to have amnesia when they take the stand. They don't want the attention of it. But these jurors have given these affidavits knowing the attention that is going to be rained down on them. They've all lawyered up, and I think at least 3 of them have a lawyer. So I think that they won't change their mind about testifying. They've made a bold move to make sure that justice is done. They felt like they were taken advantage of. They felt like there was influence in this case. So I think that they've given their statement. I think they'll stand by it.
Let me ask you, Dane, this to me, Becky Hill, and I say this is if again, right? It's if it's true. But Becky Hill knows that the clerk can't talk to the jury about how to watch evidence, how to look at evidence, can't ask about anything. The jurors can't talk to anyone except themselves once they start deliberating. But before the deliberations, they can't talk to anyone about the case, not even their spouses, right?
Nobody, period. It invades what we call in legal terms, invading the province of the jury. It's a sanctity that once you go into the deliberations, and really during that whole process, the jury is cut off. It just flies in the face of the touchstone that we all look at in terms of the right to a fair trial and impartial jury. As you heard, it could be misconduct in office, jury tampering. These are all allegations, nothing proven, but if true, rocks the fundamental principles of his right to a fair trial and impartial jury, regardless of whether you believe he's guilty or not guilty. This is a pivotal moment that ultimately, depending on the testimony presented at that evidentiary hearing, probably his best shot at receiving a new trial by far.
Wow. Okay. So this is huge. I'm not exaggerating, folks. You're listening to the best of the best down there in the Low Country. So let's take a listen, because Becky Hill was on Court TV with Julie Grant, with Neil Gordon, the author she wrote the book with, who was going to join us at the top of the hour to respond to these allegations. But here she is on August 11th. Take a listen.
Well, the Clerk of Court does a big job of being a liaison between the judge, the lawyers, the public, the documents that are in a trial. In a case of this magnitude, there's a lot of documents, there's a lot of paper, there was a lot of people that had come together from all over the world. We had people coming from France, England, California, Wyoming, and so many other places, just to be able to open our doors and have everything together for the trial that we were going to have. Just a normal, any other day kind of trial was huge. It was epic.
There she is. All right, we're going to be back in just a second because we got more to go through with our extremely smart panel tonight. This guy might get a new trial, folks. I can't believe it.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Couldn't keep my life straight.
That demanded our attention.
They were killed by their own children.
That challenged the legal system and ourselves.
How in the world can a mother wait 30 days before reporting her child missing?
These are the trials that became legendary. And now you can relive them all in one place. Court TV, Legendary Trials. Go to courttv.com/legendary trials to find out how to watch.
Members of the jury, I'm appointing juror number 826 to be the foreperson of the jury. The jury somehow thought that they would elect their own foreperson. As I told them that it's done differently in different places, I appoint forepersons.
All right, I was a little surprised by that too, that the judge appoints the foreperson, but that number is significant, juror 826. Why is that juror significant? Because of the affidavit of juror 630. I feel like we're on Get Smart here tonight. Here's the affidavit of juror 630. Ms. Hill and the jury foreperson, which is juror 826, had private conversations on multiple occasions. The affidavit of juror 785, when we visited the Moselle crime scene, Ms. Hill and juror 826, the foreperson, walked off together, avoiding other jurors in order to have a private conversation. I don't understand this. I don't understand this. Let's bring back in our guests, Jared Newman, Lori Murray, Dane Phillips, Chris Adams with us. Chris, let me ask you, is there ever a reason for the clerk to be speaking with one juror alone as opposed to the whole group?
Not at all. And I've done trials in a bunch of states throughout the South. I've never had the elected clerk of court be the person who came in and handled the jury. And I've been in big jurisdictions and very small jurisdictions, and I've never seen the clerk insert herself like that into a case. But it is highly inappropriate for there to be individual communication with any juror. All the person interacting on behalf of the court with the jury should be doing is telling them what time to be there, what would they like for their lunch order, etc. She is there to make the juror's job as comfortable as can be. She's not there to become a 13th juror or the leader or guide of the jury in reaching a decision.
Lori, I'm reading these papers and it's almost like is it a coincidence that the juror who the clerk is allegedly having these private conversations with ends up being the foreperson? Like, how does that work?
So I don't know if she had the conversations with the person because she was the foreperson or if she knew them. It's a small town. She could have known this person. There was talk in her book about putting her daughter on the jury. But what the problem is that, in my opinion, I've been on cases where the judge has picked the foreperson. I clerked for a judge, and he picked every foreperson. The problem, in my opinion, is that he didn't pick the foreperson at the beginning of the trial. So when the judge that I worked for would pick the foreperson, it was before any testimony started. You, sir, take the front seat. You're the foreperson. So why change after the trial has started? That's an issue for me. I don't think that there's any wrongdoing on Judge Newman's part. I think he just realized that, hey, I forgot to pick our foreperson, and now they've elected their own. I need to remedy that. But I don't know if Becky put in his ear to put this person on, and he would have no knowledge as to why, but there's something there's some reason why Becky's having conversations with this person. There's some reason why Becky's all up in there, and I can feel your head exploding, Benny. I can feel it. Mine exploded too on this whole thing. But it is the most obnoxious abuse of power of a clerk of court that I have ever seen.
If it's true, I keep coming back to if it's true. I'm not letting go of the grain of salt until I see testimony inside a courtroom. But Jared Newman, how unusual is all of this? I mean, are things done differently in Colton County, in this small town where, you know, the clerk is in with the jury? I mean, I'm with Chris on this. It's usually like the bailiff or somebody or someone else that kind of does all this.
I don't know this. Yeah. This to me is, I've seen this for 40 years, from cophood to prosecutor to lawyer. I think the most telling thing came out of Miss Hill's statement, and I got this from one of her interviews I watched today. She said, I was on the side of justice. I had been with them when we were all together on the side of right. And I think what's gone wrong with a lot of things is that you convict a criminal defendant. It's not the side of right. The side of right is to bring out the facts, and if the jury concludes that the state proved their case beyond a reasonable doubt, they convict. If they don't, they let them go.
Dane, what if this turns out to be true? Like, if this is what the testimony is, could you? Because I rarely see like the trial judge say, "Oh yeah, we're going to do this again." Could you see, though, in this scenario, if everything falls into place for the defense and they get this hearing in front of, well, it won't be in front of Newman, you're saying. Is that automatic that it won't be in front of Newman? That does he have to take himself out? Is that a motion? How does that work?
As soon as the defense calls him as a witness, then he is no longer able to preside over. He cannot be judge and witness in the case. So that becomes, from a procedural standpoint, a very significant issue. So given the fact that there was discussions that happened not on the record, that you would require witness testimony, sworn witness testimony, I believe he would be a witness. And at that point, you have the issue where they would have to ask that Judge Newman be recused from that evidentiary hearing, as he would be called as a witness to testify as to his own personal knowledge as to what happened. And see, in these motions for a new trial based on after discovered evidence, there's a 5-factor test that you look at. And I think one of the biggest things that ultimately whichever judge is going to have to preside over that evidentiary hearing when they make that determination is, would the outcome probably change, or would this after discovered evidence probably change the result of the new trial? That's probably the biggest thing, because clearly this is newly discovered evidence. It didn't exist. They couldn't have found it. It's absolutely material evidence, and it's not merely cumulative and impeaching. And I know I'm going deep into legal terms, but no, the biggest thing is that
it's the most important thing. It's the jury.
Right.
Like, it doesn't get more important than this. Wow, this is just explosive tonight.
Look, as Jared said, it could be structural from that point where they presume prejudice, and that at the end of the day, when you invade the province of the jury, the only way to remedy that and to have the sanctity of a true verdict, as they say, would be a new trial.
New trial. All right. Great to have everyone with us tonight. Jared Newman, Lori Murray, Dane Phillips, Christopher Adams. Thank you all so much for working through this. I think we'll be talking about it again, like, very soon.